Sometime in the latter part of 2012, I found myself still restless, and I didn't know where that restlessness came from. At the time, I was talking already. I got to know the newly elected delegate superior of the MCs here in the Philippines, Sister Elizabeth Pereira. So I shared that restlessness with her, and I told her half with humor that I passed 60 already. I had retired, and yet I was still restless. And so I think it was the second time that I told her that she told me about this particular association attached to the MC Sisters. And that was the first time I heard about FEC, which stands for Fraternidade Eclesial Claritiana. Of course, I knew about secular institutes, but I had no idea that the MC Sisters had an association that was on the road or on the path to becoming a secular institute. So I became curious, but before I could continue, I stopped myself and I said, you know what, sister, I know of another woman, younger than me, but already past the age when sisters become religious sisters, who is also interested. So may I share it with her? And of course, Sister Elizabeth said yes. And so I shared it with another woman with whom I was working at that time in the Claretian period. So this is Sol. Unbeknown to me, Sol also shared it with another, even younger woman who was working with the Vocation ministry of the Claretians, and who is still with the Vocation ministry. This is RD. And so the next time that Sister Elizabeth said, oh, are we going to meet? I said, Sister, may I bring two other women? And so that started first our inquiry the last quarter of 2012 or 2013. And then in January of 2014, we started visiting and then talking with Sister Elizabeth, and that started our formal initial formation into FEC. I was curious, and I still was curious even in 2014. So when we started our sessions with Sister Elizabeth, she asked us, do you know anything about Mother Leonia? Maybe two of us know. And I know, she told us, I know all of you know about Nathaniel Claret because he's the founder of the congregation. But do you know that there are other religious groups attaching? Of course, the three of us said yes. We know the sister congregations. And then I remember Sister Elizabeth saying, yes, we're another sister congregation, but this time based in Brazil. And so we started to get to know more about FEC, or FEC, or FECI, as our sisters in Brazil told us. And we learned that it's not based here, but based in Brazil. And that the first delegation was in Chile. And all of us were curious if there's such a thing as older women who can become consecrated, but who can remain lay. And so that whole year of 2014, we got to know more about the missionaries Claretianas, or missionarias Claretianas, as we got to know them. And of course, we came visiting to the convent. The convent is not like it is now. It was the old form of convent, but sharing a lot of laughter, experiences with Sister Elizabeth, because by the time we were already older, now we're even much older. And so by the end of 2014, Sister Elizabeth already asked us, are we serious? And all of us said yes, without any qualms. because she told us, if you're serious, I can already tell the FEC in Brazil. At that time, the FEC was still headed by the original delegation, which is in Chile. But in 2015, when they had 2015 when they had the General Assembly, a new set of leaders were elected, and the center of FEC was transferred to Brazil. And so even if we continued with our formation with Sister Elizabeth, we also met new ones via letters, because we still were not meeting online. And we got to know not only more about Mother Leonia Militu, Don Geraldo Fernandez, or the Missionarias Claretianas, but why it's in Brazil and not in Spain, and why it's even more missionary oriented, as all three of us wanted. Claretian, Ordinarian, Eucharistic, but the missionary dimension was what attracted us. Plus, we started to get to know what being a lay and a missionary, a lay consecrated person is, which we were looking for. We didn't want just a simple commitment, but we were looking at how he could become consecrated through the evangelical counsels. So that's how we began our formation in I have been asked of the significance of a lay consecrated person in the church and in our world today. And that question has been asked of me many times, especially by younger people who feel attracted to the religious life, but feel that they are not called to the religious life. And so I have also thought about it and asked myself, well, what comes to mind is, first of all, life has become more complicated. There are many complexities now in life lived today. There are also a lot of distractions. And so a lay consecrated life adds to the meaning of, to the question or your answer of, why am I here? I have been a devout Catholic almost my whole life. Attending Mass almost daily, but at least the Sunday Mass, doing my morning and evening prayers, trying to be good, trying to do good. But I have asked myself also, is that all that there is? Is there still something that the Lord calls us to? And of course, I remember the story of the rich young man. Not because I'm rich and because I'm young and I'm not a man, but I do have wealth. Wealth in terms of not only material possessions, but maybe friendship, talents. But what does God really ask of me? And I realized that when we start thinking about a consecrated life, our lives become more focused. That the distractions will always be there, but we are not easily distracted. But when we become focused on who is its source and what we really are called to, then life does not become as scattered as I used to have, even in my own life. But more so when we had our first vows, or I prefer the term the evangelical counsels, when our spiritual director then told me in particular, he said, Charo, you have to ask yourself, what do the evangelical counsels mean to you as a lay person? You want to be consecrated, but you're not a religious sister. So what does it mean? And through the years, I have thought about it, but lately, probably because I also deal with younger students these days, and especially this year, I realized that in total, the evangelical counsels free us. Sometimes there's this misunderstanding that when you take a vow or when you say yes to counsel, it restricts us. But on the contrary, which is the paradox, no, it frees us. For example, celibate chastity. I emphasize celibate because even in marriage, you can be chaste. Even when you have exclusive relationships, you can practice chastity. But to be celibate, really, to be alone, not to have someone exclusively with you, frees you from the many human desires that arise from the human heart. And I'm quite honest, I have to be honest with myself because I am attracted to men and very heterosexual. When I see someone who attracts me, the human desire comes. But I know that I have taken the vow or the counsel of celibate chastity. And so the attraction, the desire is not really submerged, but is taken in its entity, in its whole. So I don't just love one person, but I love probably the company that he's in, the family that he's in. That's one example for celibate chastity. And I don't also focus only on that one. And to me, this has been a challenge through the years, even now that I'm much older. But I remember one spiritual director telling me, but that's good because it shows the human side of you. So the Evangelical Council of Celibate Chastity orders that desire. So I don't go beyond. The Council of Poverty, the usual understanding of poverty is to be poor. But I cannot be poor because I live by myself or I live with my family. So I need work. I need a paying job, at least to make sure that I'm not a burden to my family. I can feed myself, I can clothe myself, I can share shelter, the basic needs. But poverty, the Council of Poverty expands that and removes me from attachments to things. For example, I love books. I really love books. I love reading. And so there was a time I really would just accumulate, get more possessions, more books. But when I started thinking about poverty, I said, wait a minute, I don't need these books. I mean, once I've read it, then I can share it. And so that has started removing the books from my little library. So even until now, my youngest sister with whom I live with, she asks me, Manang, do you need that book already? Because if not, you can give it away. And I said yes. To give it away, not to be attached. So those are books. But other material possessions, even clothes. There was a time I wanted to have a new clothes, a new dress every month. But that desire to have more than what I need, little by little through the years, and because of focusing on the Evangelical Council of Poverty, I've learned to live more simply. The Evangelical Council of Obedience has been the hardest. I always thought that I had to obey a superior until that same spiritual director said, no, you have to think what does obedience mean. And I realized obedience is not so much following what your superior, or we call them coordinators in FBC, but listening closely to what your coordinator, what the sisters who are in charge of it are saying, what other people whom you work with, what are they saying? How does God talk through them? And not only through people, but also through events. How come this thing is happening? What is it in this event or in this situation? And more often, it's a situation that one is uncomfortable with. For example, I was asked to be in the English camp, and the first question was, me? I'm already old. I mean, I love the youth, but you know how to go with all their energy and their movement. And I was surprised to find out, yeah, exactly. God knew better than I do. So that's listening to an obedience of a younger superior when I said, okay, Ate Charo, it's all right with you. You'll be in the English camp. You'll be the English teacher. And even to my surprise, I just said yes. So that gives you an idea how evangelical counsels free me as a lay consecrated person. In a conference that I was asked to talk in 2019, 2 weeks after my little delegation had just come back from Brazil, I was asked what advice could I give to younger people who were considering a similar path, a path of lay consecrated life, a path that doesn't necessarily identify one as religious. I have been thinking about this, so when I was asked again this question, I have thought of three pieces of advice. One is an age-old advice. Know yourself. Know everything about yourself, not only the good points, but also the not so good points. And especially when people point out what is not nice in you. For example, for a long time I was called as masungit. That's a Tagalog term, a Filipino term that means I seldom smile. It seems that I was always frowning, that I was finding fault. And I would always react and say, but I'm not masungit. I'm not that. Then I realized that people would call me that because I seldom smile. So I said, okay, maybe I will try to put it inside myself to smile more often. So that's one. Know yourself also emotionally. What what disturbs you? What uh, what are trigger points for you that you either blow your top or you get mad or makes you happy and makes you joyous. Another aspect is know yourself, your psychological and psychical framework. This came much, much later. I know my talents. I have many talents. There are many times I still complain to God because sometimes I really get tired. And always the answer comes back to me. I never told you to do it all at the same time. So know yourself. There are times I like to work, 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 but now as I grow older, there are times I just want to sleep, I just want to eat, I want to cook, or do nothing at all. So if you know yourself, you know your limitations. I know that I cannot run anymore the way I used to run, that I always will need help with someone so that I don't stumble or fall. These are things that I've started to accept as I grow older. But that can only come because I know a little bit more about myself. So that's the first piece of advice. The second is learn from your experiences. There are many things in life that will happen or that happen that you don't like. But I also have learned that these experiences which are uncomfortable or sometimes which you hate, I wish I never underwent that experience, or I wish I never met that person. I don't like that person. I don't like what he or she did to me, or I like that person. I like what she or he did to me, or how we walked together, our experiences. That those experiences tell you something about you, about me. Especially the experiences that when you say, I don't like that person. Now, almost I think automatically I ask myself, oh, why don't I like that person? What is it in me? So I'm learning from the relationship, I'm learning from whatever experience I undergo with that person or with others. I learn more about, again, myself. So you learn. And the third piece of advice is something which is needed for lay consecrated persons, especially because we lead celibate lives. When you're young, And what I mean by young is high school, college, and the young adult life. Create a circle of friends. Have a circle of friends. And I'm not limiting myself to single people. We will have friends who get married, and friends, male and female. Although typically I have more female friends, but I also have male friends. I get to know their wives. Many of them are married. Some of the marriages do not work well. I get to know both of them. But they are friends. Now why is this needed? There will be times in our lives that something happens to us and we cannot answer simply because we don't share an exclusive relationship with others. And so, like, if it's something that attraction that you feel is not anymore appropriate, you can go to a married friend and married guy friend if you have, or a married woman, and ask, well, what is it? What is it in my framework? What is it in the other? Or there are times that your family is not available and you want to share with someone. So if you have a friend whom you can share intimately, you know, how you feel, how you act, then you can share it with a friend. And in my own life experiences, there are times when I just need a friend to sit beside me. Just someone that I know is comfortable, that doesn't send either, you know, bad vibes or what, just to sit beside me while I go through thinking what will be my next step. Because yes, life is indeed a journey. It's a process. And so if you have good friends, single, married, religious, even friends who are not religious and who don't believe in God, and I do have friends like that, when they ask questions, it makes you think, how am I going to answer them? But more importantly, people other than your blood relations with whom you can relate with as a brother and sister in Christ if you are Christians, and as another human being. And that for me provides the richness that a lifeline such as mine will have. And I hope that young ones, if you're in, especially in your upper 20s and then your 30s, those are the ages when you start asking, oh, how am I going to live my life? If not forever, at least for many more years. That's also the time that it's good that you have good friends. Good friends who can help you, who can guide you, or who can